in any direction. My name is Carol Kozak Ward, and so far I see many of you here, and I'm trying to also take care of the waiting room where folks are waiting from hither and yon to join us. Here's my little bit of the commercial before I turn it over to Seth Ward. First of all, thank you. And the thank yous also include SCFD, which is the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, of which the Colorado Hebrew Chorale is a proud Tier 3 member, now going on 20 years. SCFD was established by the taxpayers in 1989. More about this wonderful entity that supports arts and culture of all types at scfd.org. The Colorado Hebrew Chorale also thanks the city and county of Denver for their ongoing support. In addition, we also thank the M.D. Glassman Foundation, the Bain Foundation, you, and all the other yous that we can think of, because this program, as an online program, certainly could not happen without you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Seth Ward, elsewhere on Jersey Street, and special guest, cantor Janet Eileen Roth. The L'Chaim program has indeed gone full circle from when we started 2 years ago in August of 2020 amid the pandemic, and Cantor Roth led us off with L'Chaim, A Taste of Jewish Music from Tel Aviv. She's joining us tonight. This whole session is basically fresh from the North American Jewish Choral Festival last month in Stamford, Connecticut. Take it away. And everyone else, you've got questions, put them in the chat. Otherwise, mute yourselves for now. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome to everybody. Welcome, Leora. Thanks for waking up so early in the morning. It's good to see you again. Leora is here all the way from the Arava in southern Israel, where it is like 4 o'clock in the morning. I wish I could greet everybody in person, but there you go. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully this will work out fine. Here we go. So today's program is called the Singing Shekel, Poets, Poetry, and Songs on Israeli Currency. I corrected this. This is from the NHAC. I hope that I have the new one. Let me see if I get the new one out. Okay. Get a thumbs up. Okay. Now, can you hear me a little better now? Somebody say something.
Seth, we can hear you, and it's wonderful to see you, but we can't see your what you're sharing. It's just blank right now, and the audio is a little bit. It's okay, but it's peaking. It's clipping a little bit. Just so you know.
How about now? Can you see? Wait a minute. One more thing.
We can see you now. We can see you now. The audio is still clipping a little bit for us, at least.
Let me try one more thing.
Uh-oh. How do I always do that? Phyllis.
Okay, I'm going to try one more thing.
Okay, right now we can see what your screen share. We can see that well. Just the audio isn't perfect, but we can see L'Chaim, A Taste of Jewish Music very beautifully.
I did not test the Zoom. I had a car issue earlier today.
Oh, wie sieht eigentlich sein hier? Huh.
An alternative. Is this better for the microphone?
Yes, that is an improvement. Thank you.
Okay, so tonight's program is called The Chaim, a Taste of Jewish Music, the Singing Shekel, Poets, Poetry, and Songs on Israeli Currency. As you saw, this was premiered at the North American Jewish Choral Festival. I have thanks to Bobby Sue, who I saw is on our Zoom, for all of the work that she and many other people did to make the NHACF work. The Colorado Hebrew Chorale is the sponsor. You can go to info at Colorado Hebrew Chorale. You can sign up for our newsletter. And for those of you who are in Denver, there'll be a live encore in Denver in October. I have a picture here of Cantor Roth. Janet knows how thrilled I am that she's joining us. Thank you very much, Janet. And Carol has already read you the Toda Rabah, the Scientific Cultural Facilities based in MB Glassman Foundation, the city and county of Denver. Here is the brochure, the postcard invitation to join the Hebrew Chorale and some of the exciting events that are happening in the next couple of months. Performance at the Golda Meir House Museum in Denver in September, our signature event, Raisins and Almonds, in February, and we are planning two very nice programs, Israel at 75 and Salomone Rossi at 400. Well, this should give you the location of most of the material in today's presentation. It is at something called sworduwcourses.wordpress.com. And if you just go there and type in the Singing Shekels, you will find the material. I taught at the University of Wyoming for almost 20 years. I have, in fact, as of a few weeks ago, just retired.
That's the moment.
Today we are going to be Toda Rabah from Rachel HaMishoreret on the 20 shekel note, from Shaul Chernichovsky on the 50 shekel note, Leah Goldberg on the 100 shekel note, and Natan Alterman on the 200 shekel note. The reason for this is because a couple of years back in 2014 or even a little bit earlier, the Bank of Israel decided that they should have poets on the notes. Now, they in fact were thinking about having political figures instead. Menachem Begin was going to be on one of the notes. His family, not surprisingly, said, no way. Here's what the Bank of Israel wrote. The banknotes in the third series of the new shekel carry the portraits of outstanding Hebrew poets whose life stories, works, and activities are intertwined with the story of the rebirth of the nation of Israel in its land. Here is a handout. I'm going to attempt to get this into the chat so that if you want, you can follow it. To do that, I have to open up the chat. I have to make sure it will go to everyone. Is the sound still fuzzy, or did my alternate microphone help the sound?
Your alternate microphone helped the
good.
sound. Very good, Seth.
I did not want to connect to Google Drive. I'm going to stop the share for a moment. This may make it a little bit easier. Everyone in meeting. This should send you all something from my computer.
Seth, you're muted now. Just unmute and we'll hear you.
Thank you. You just received through the chat a very lengthy document that has all of the words. It has notes for all of the songs. Some of them easier to read than others. And I have the notes also in the PowerPoint, but this may be easier for some people. Okay, back to the PowerPoint.
I don't see it in the chat.
You should have received something called the Singing Shekel. It's pretty large. It might take a while to get to you.
Okay.
Now, part of the thing about L'chaim is that we have food and drink that come along with each session. Some of the people who we were talking about, some of the poets, Opferman and Leah Goldberg, as long as she lived in Tel Aviv, were famous to have eaten at Kassit restaurant on Dizengoff. Kassit had this picture that I found with a tafrit miyuchad, and so I have in the past couple of days done everything. First of all, they advertised Shtok 84, Shmonim V'Arba. I tried to buy this. In point of fact, there is a liquor store in Long Island that advertised that they had Shtok 84, kosher for Passover. But when I reached out to them, they told me they no longer had it and it's no longer made in Israel and so on. I bought brandy and so on, but it's not the same. I made the bean soup. They talked about shi'uit, and I have a recipe, and I'll show you how to get it. In fact, I may even, I'll pull it up in a moment. They talked about schnitzelim, and they talk about two sides. So this is a picture of the schnitzels. I cut them to be a little bit smaller, and then I made Brussels sprouts. I found an Israeli cookbook in my house from the 1960s. Their suggestion was that being very common, very, by the way, Bonnie, I found the book thanks to you. Becoming popular to boil the Brussels sprouts in a beef soup mixed with a brisket and with honey and some spices. I used part of soup powder instead, but actually was pretty good. I made tabbouleh to go along with it, not very kassit. When I went to the local supermarket, they did not have kasha, and the varnishkas, the bow ties were much too expensive compared to what I was expecting to pay for them. So I made tabbouleh instead. And finally, it's a coffee shop. I went out and bought a coffee maker that is a stovetop espresso maker and made espresso. Carol, can you enter the people in the waiting room? Here, I just did it. Okay, I have the recipes over here, and you should see this. I have the recipes that I used in case you're interested, and I'm going to try to put this in the chat as well. I'm not going to go into it in great length. Here you see a picture of the tiny 3 espresso cup maker that I bought, less than $7 on Amazon.
We don't see it. We don't see it.
Oh, it says screen sharing is paused. Okay, so I am not going to take the time to do this. I am going to try to put it in the chat at some point or another. And I'm going to go back. I know what the problem is. Now I'm screen sharing. So there you go. That's the food. Okay, our first poet is called Rachel HaMishoreret, Rachel Blufstein. She lived from 1890 to 1931. And she came to the land of Israel as an agricultural worker. Let's see, she married, and her married name was Sela, although that's rarely used. She was born in Saratov in what was then the Tsarist Empire. She moved to Poltava in the Ukraine and then to Kiev. She visited Palestine when she was 19. She decided to stay. She lived in Rehovot, and then she moved to Kinneret, where she worked in a women's agricultural school. Aleph Dalet Gordon suggested to her that she study agronomy in France. She went to Toulouse, and she was unable to return to Palestine because World War I broke out. She went to Russia. She was finally able to return to Palestine in 1919. And she went to Gordon's kibbutz, Degania, but she was expelled when she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. She lived in Tel Aviv for a while. Her last address was Bogoshov number 5. And then she went to a tuberculosis sanatorium in Gedera. She died in 1931. She is buried in the Kinneret Cemetery, a place worth visiting, as you will see in a moment. The first of the songs we want to do is Sham Hare Golan, as it's almost always known. The official name is Kinneret. And here I have to tell you that I'm thrilled that we have rather than having Chava Alberstein sing it for you, we have something far better. So, Janet, are you able to link in now? Can you see the words? I'll keep the words going.
So how, can you hear me?
I hear you, Janet.
Can you hear the guitar?
Hear the guitar.
Okay. So we're up in the Catskills here. You got the Lake Glimmerglass in the background. Sham hare golan hoshet hayad v'gaman midbama b'tachat nitzavim atzol בלבילות קורנת נמפר מונסמה בצינון נושבת מפסגת הצחול שם על חוף הים ישתה כשפול צמרת סתום שערות דקל כתינוק שבר שמש למטה ובימי כנרת ובימי כנרת משכשך רגליו מה ירבו פרחים בחרף על הקרח דם הכלנית בכתם הכרכום יש שם תשב אז ירוק הירק ישיבים תכולת חלק במרום גם יברש החלק שכוח והיה הלב למשורות זרים האוכל יבגוד בך האוכל ישכוח האוכל ישכוח חסד נעורים שם הרי גולן שם הרי גולן שם
Turn on your microphones and applaud. The reverse of the shekel has, you won't see the poem unless you have very, very good eyes on the front of the shekel note. It's written in micrography. But the reverse side of the shekel has one line from what is probably her most famous poem. Hoi Kinneret Sheli Hahayit, O Chalamti Chalom. Oh, my Kinneret, did you exist, or were you merely a dream? I'm going to suggest that you mute yourself. Many of you know this, and sing along. If you downloaded the handout, you would see the notes by Sharet. Sharet, Yehuda Sharet was the brother of Moshe Sharet, the second prime minister of the state of Israel. He served as prime minister in between Ben Gurion, first and second term. And this is the handwritten form of the music that has survived, and I copied it from Zemereshet. just a little bit about the words. Perhaps these things never happened. Perhaps I never rose at dawn to plant the fields with my own hands. Rachel in Tel Aviv is looking back to her very young life when she was healthy and working on the Chavat Nashim, on the women's farm. I have two references here, but Janet is going to sing this again. Esther Ofarim has a recording with Yoni Rechter. Rechter is phenomenal. He's playing the piano. Esther Ofarim is wonderful, but Rechter is just super on this recording. The other YouTube is Shlishiat Gesher Yarkon with a very, very young Yehoram Gaon and Arik Einstein in 3-part harmony. Very wonderful, but we have it even better. And I'm going to recommend you sing along with Janet, but mute because Zoom does not like singing along. Janet, how's it go? Are you ready?
Yes. ואולי לא היו הדברים מעולם, ואולי מעולם לא השכמתי שחר הגן לאדון בזיעת אפיים. מעולם ימים ארוכים ויוקדים של קציר במרובי עגלה ושאת אלומות לא נתתי קולי לשיר. ולמרות טהרתי בתכלת שוטו ובטון של כנרת שלי, אוי כנרת שלי, איך היית חלמתי חלום של כנרת שלי, אוי כנרת שלי, איך היית חלמתי חלום.
Janet, thank you very much. I'm going to try to stop. I'm going to try to stop the share for a moment and see if I can play just a little bit of the Gesher Yarkon trio. Okay. This is the recording I want. Share screen. I'm going to hope that this will work. Can you see a green screen that says Ve'ulai?
Yes, very good.
Cool. And you should be able.
ואולי לא היו הדברים מעולם, ואולי מעולם לא השכמתי עם שחר לגן לעובדו בזיעת אפיים. מעולם וימים ארוכים ויוקדים של קציר ממרומי עגלה עמוסת אלומות לא נתתי קולי בשיר מעולם לא טהרתי בתכלת שוקתה ובתום.
And you'll have to go online if you want to hear the rest of that. But years ago, I had occasion to speak to Dobi Seltzer about Casablanca, and he told me that Yehoram Gaon was at his top form when he was very young, when he was in the show in the 1960s. And, there you go. Okay, back to sharing the screen with the PowerPoint. Rachel is buried in the cemetery at Kinneret alongside Yam Kinneret. As it happened, right behind her is a grave of another poet, Elisheva Bitovsky. She wasn't Jewish enough to be buried in Tveria. She was a Russian, not originally Jewish, never really had a proper conversion. But unlike, for example, Chernyakhovsky's wife, she learned Hebrew and she wrote poetry in Hebrew, and she was buried there. You'll notice that near Rachel's grave is a book. And if you go there, there's not only a push button thing that you can hear somebody singing Ve'ulai, and maybe even a story about Rachel, but there's also a book of her poems that's usually found right next to her grave. Another famous grave that's right around the corner is Nomi Shemer. She's buried next to her parents, Meir and Rivka Sapir, and her second husband, Mordechai Horowitz. There are lots of other very, very famous graves in the Kinneret Cemetery. It's, I think, worth going to visit. The next poet is called Shaul Chernyakhovsky, and here you have a picture of him on the 50 shekel note. The reverse has Ki od amin gam ba'adam gam berucho ruach az from the poem Ani Ma'amin, I believe, and we'll get back to that in a moment. The front of the note has in micrography a poem called Hoi Artsi Moladati. It was written in Tel Aviv on November 23rd in 1933. At least that's the date that Chernyakhovsky gave it. Chernyakhovsky was born in, where are my notes over here? Chernyakhovsky was born in Russia. He lived in Odessa for a couple of years. He was very friendly with Tuvia Shlonsky, the father of Avraham Shlonsky. We'll get back to that in a moment. He was educated to be a doctor and got his degree from Heidelberg. He married Maria Karlova, vaguely a Russian princess. And she never learned Hebrew, despite the fact that Chernyakhovsky was one of the most famous Hebrew poets that ever was. His wife really was not able to participate in that. He went to the United States for a while. He wrote Omrim Yeshna Eretz before he came to live in the land of Israel. And there are a number of works that compare the two works. In any case, we're going to talk about Hoi Artsi Moladati first. My country, my homeland, bold rocky mountain, faint herd, lamb and kid, happy golden citrus, monasteries, a gravestone pile, clay dome on the house, a settlement not settled, olive by olive. I should have the entire words over here. John, I think this is one that you have learned also, right?
Hoi artsi moladati har thrashim pereach et volpe seugdi sav hador sameach min zaharim matzevaki potit al bayit moshava lo moshava zayit zayit ארץ עץ מורשה דקרב כפיים גדר קלצה דרשה נחל כמו המים ריח פרדסי אביב שיר צלצל גברת חלחולות לים סביב צל שכמה נופלת ארץ נחלת מדבר סין קסם חופר לכת וזר החמסין בלונות שלכת ערם גפנים לונים תל חורבה נחרשת חוללות לבנים השבה נושקת אוי אוי ארץ חמדת לב השביר רשאית בירסות ביתום בנגב בשמיים היית ריח פרדסי אביב שיר צלצל גברת ים של אור טובע הכל על פני כל התכלת ריח פרדסי אביב שיר צלצל גברת ים של אור טובע הכל על פני כל התכלת.
Thank you very much. I just want to go back. Okay. Had some sort of a problem. I think the last two poets, I just copied the handout. It worked a little bit better than this. Oh, live stream. Congratulations. The poetry is very interesting and very important. I have some notes. We really don't have a lot of time to talk about the poems. One of the commentators I looked at thought about how Chernyakhovsky plays with some of the words gamelet for a camel caravan and a number of other words that might have really been invented by him. The poem on the reverse side is probably his most famous poem, Ani Ma'amin. Very often people call it Sahki Sahki. The title, oh, by the way, I should mention that Nomi Shemer set Sham Hare Golan, and she set the Poyartzi Moladati. Shemer said that she dedicated the song to Gil Aldema. The Colorado Hebrew Chorale, our hosts, is a choral organization. The importance of Gil Aldema for Israeli choral music cannot possibly be overstated. One of the most important arrangers that there ever was. Chernyakhovsky wrote Ani Ma'amin as a young man. Probably in 1892, he was still in Odessa. The story goes that he was so excited, he ran over to his friend's house, the Shlonskys. He read it to Tuvia Shlonsky, the father, and probably Avram Shlonsky was there as well. And they were excited. They hugged him, and Tuvia said, I have a good melody for it. The melody probably is an adaptation of a Russian folk song about the river Don. I was not able to find the folk song to confirm it to you. The title of the poem is Ani Ma'amin, I believe, and one has to think that the Ani Ma'amin is related to Maimonides' 13 Principles, a very famous summary of them, also called Ani Ma'amin. Many of us are probably familiar with the Ani Ma'amin, the 12th of the Principles that was sung according to many stories by Jews who were being sent to the gas chambers. And there are a number of other melodies as well. The first one also, I believe in perfect faith in the Creator, has been set to music many, many times. This poem is quite different. I believe in man, in his spirit, a strong spirit. The remaining principles of Maimonides' text talk about divine unity, incorporeality, and eternity, Moses, Torah, reward and punishment, and the Messiah. But Chernyakhovsky's credo emphasizes his belief in progress, a better world, humanism, socialism, freedom, the spread of peace between people, the return of Jews to their homeland, and even of his own legacy as a poet. When I was a kid, many, many years ago, this was a kind of anthem. I remember singing this in Camp Ramah and many other locations. I remember singing many of the verses. I was surprised how many people are aware only of one or two of the verses. But I think Janet has said she's going to sing all the verses. And I recommend those of you who know the song, sing along, of course, on mute. Janet, please.
Saki saki alachalom, zuani ha'odem sak, saki kibar adam amin ki yoreni mamin bach, saki kibar adam amin ki yoreni mamin bach. כי עוד נפשי דרור שואפת, לא מחרתיה לעגל פס, כי אוהבים גם אדם גם ברוחו רוח חס, כי אוהבים גם אדם גם ברוחו רוח חס. רוחו ישליך כאן להבל, ירום ממנו במות העל, לא ברב ימות עובד רול לנפש פת לדל, לא ברב ימות עובד רול לנפש פת לדל. שחיקי גם בריאות אמין כי עוד אמצע לב, לב תקוותיי גם תקוותם יחוש אושר יבינתם, לב תקוותיי גם תקוותם יחוש אושר יבינתם. האמירה גם מעטי, אף אם ירחק זה היום, אך בו יבוא יישאו שלום, וברכה לאום מלאום, אך בו יבוא יישאו שלום, אז וברכה לאום מלאום. ישוב יפרח אז גם אני, ובארץ יקום דור, ברזל כבר יוסר ממנו, עין בעין יראה אור, ברזל כבר יוסר ממנו, עין בעין יראה אור. יחיה ויפעל יעש, דור בארץ אומנם חי, לא בעתיד בשמיים חיי רוח, לא עמדי, לא בעתיד בשמיים חיי רוח, לא עמדי. על שחדש ישיר משורר, יופי ונשגב לי בוער, לא לצעיר להרכיב לי פרחים ילקטו לזר, לא לצעיר להרכיב לי פרחים ילקטו לזר. שחקי שחקי על החלום, זו אני החולם שחקי כי באדמה כי עודני מאמין בך, שחקי כי באדמה כי עודני מאמין בך.
Thank you very, very much. I have a picture here of the San Simon Monastery in next to what's called Katamon, Greek for next to the monastery. Maria Karlova had arranged for an apartment there, and she lived there for part of the time with their daughter. And Chernyakhovsky died there in October of 1943, and they kept it a secret for a while. He's buried in Trumpeldor Cemetery. It's named because of it's on Trumpeldor Street, not because Yosef Trumpeldor is buried there. This is a very well-known cemetery in Tel Aviv. I went there to visit the grave of Arik Einstein. At the time I was last there, some of the other people who are now there, Bernard Lewis, for example, had not yet died, if I remember correctly. Bialik, Ahad Ha'am, Moshe Sharet, Shoshana Damari, many other people are buried there. Let's go on to Leah Goldberg. You can see on the Leah Goldberg design that there are the flowers, these are the almond blossoms, and there are the ayal, the deer, one of her famous children's books. This is the 100 shekel note. Yamim levanim arukim. Oh, I wanted to say this. I said yamim. Hebrew scholars will note that Janet correctly sang Sachki Sachki with Ashkenazi accent, even though she sang it with Sephardi vowels. Chernyakhovsky and Bialik wrote their poems with the penultimate stress of European Hebrew, almost all of their entire life and their entire output. A little bit hard sometimes to sing it with the modern Israeli stress. Goldberg, though, wrote in modern Hebrew. Yamim levanim arukim kmo bakayitz karnei hachama. That's on the reverse. We'll get to that in a moment. Goldberg lived in Tel Aviv for a while on Arnon Street, and she eventually got a position at Hebrew University where she created the comparative literature department, and she was the department head for until her death, basically. She came by her dissertation quite, I think, appropriately, and I want to spend a moment talking about her advisor. Paul Kalla was an anti-Nazi in Germany that was rapidly becoming much less friendly to Jews. Kalla is known to have written that, to have recounted that when the Nazis asked him to declare he was an Aryan, he said, "I am a German. I am not an Aryan from India or some other godforsaken place. And I'm proud of being a German, enough with this nonsense." Clearly, Kalla had to leave and he went to London. Goldberg's dissertation was in an area of great interest to Professor Kalla, the Samaritan Pentateuch Targum, a translation of the manuscripts. Kalla had done an edition of the Samaritan Pentateuch. I don't know that anybody reads her work today in terms of the Samaritan Talmud, Targum. Targum is a translation of the Samaritan Bible, which is very close to the regular Jewish Bible, except that it has references to Har Gerizim, the Mount Gerizim, where the Samaritans to this day have their sanctuary, and a few other changes. But many people read her books, Aye Pluto, Where is Pluto? I have an image of Pluto from a street scene in, I'm actually not sure where the image is from. And Ma'osot Ha'ayalot, what do the antelopes do? It turns out when I last visited my daughter and her family, my granddaughter has some of Leah Goldberg's books, possibly because I bought them for her mother, possibly because she just got them. The books retain their popularity to this day. Let me just see if I have another note. I do, but without any further ado, I'm going to go to the next slide. Be'eretz Ahavati is part of a 3-poem trilogy and was published all together. This poem is the most famous, and it's the one that's upbeat. No one knows quite exactly what it's all about. I read that this is often studied in high schools in Israel because it's not clear whether the land of my love, Eretz Ahavati, is the land of Leah Goldberg's desired love. She never married. She lived with her mother until her death. And maybe there was some either real or fictional love that she never really had. Or whether it is the land of Israel or possibly Warsaw or the lands of her youth. There's a lot of discussion about it. This music was set by Moni Amarillo. Moni, short for Salamoni Amarillo, originally from Romania, as I recall. And his collected poems have this as their title. I think, Janet, this is one of the poems you know as well. I'm going to pull up the words a little bit larger. And I did this from the handout, so it's a little bit easier and more correct. Janet, are you ready for this? By the way, please sing along with her. Just mute if you do it.
שבע עולמות, שבע אמהות, שבע כלות בשער. שבע עולמות, שבע כלות בשער. שבע כלות בשער. בארץ אהבתי על הצריח דגל, ארץ אהבתי יבוא לרגל. בשעה טובה, בשעה ברוכה, המשגיחה כל צער. בשעה טובה, המשגיחה כל צער. המשגיחה כל צער. אך מי אלינו שלום ירנו, ומי רווחה לא יכירנו. מי לא יתלה, מי לא ישנה, ומי יפתח לו הדלת. ארץ אהבתי השקט פורח, בארץ אהבתי מחכים להריח. שבע עולמות, שבע אמהות, שבע כלות בשער. שבע עולמות, שבע כלות בשער. שבע כלות בשער.
Thank you very much. When we ran this song at the North American Jewish Choral Festival, one of the people in the audience insisted correctly that we run the paratroopers with Ruchama Raz singing this. Wonderful. I just don't know that I have time to do it this evening, but look for it on YouTube or go to my website that I recommended before. I'll say it again, sworduwcourses.wordpress.com. Look for the singing Shekel, and there will be a link to Ruchama Raz singing it. Amarillo taught this line by line. It does not look like the paratroopers knew how to read music. There's a recording of him teaching the notes. And he apparently worked with Chava Alberstein to already back in the 1970s to make sure it was a great melody. Goldberg, in addition to writing children's poetry and adult poetry, was also, like Chernyakhovsky and like Alterman, a translator. She's known for translating War and Peace and As You Like It. Chernyakhovsky translated ancient Greek material. He translated the Odyssey and the Iliad and a few other Russian works. White days long, like the rays, this of sun in summertime. This is on the reverse of the 100 shekel notes. I think, Janet, this is one that you did not learn yet, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. So we'll look at this. White days long like the rays of the sun in the summertime, a great sonnet from solitude on the surface of the river. And you can read the rest of the translation. I'm going to set this up to have the composer sing part of it, and we will not go through the entire piece. I saw in the chat something about religiosity, whereas Chernyakhovsky wrote a piece that is very, very strongly humanist. Goldberg's piece about Eretz Ahavati has sometimes been thought to be very religious. I have no idea. I'll leave the experts in modern Israeli literature to debate this. But the reason they say that is because there's religious language, there's reference to the sevens. Some of the sevens could be 7 festivals, 7 days of the week, and there are many other references. If you look carefully, some of the wording also mimics religious tones. This is part of traditional Jewish poetic modes. With Yehuda Levi and some of the medieval poets, you can never tell whether the poem is totally secular or totally religious, or whether it is romantic, male-female heterosexual love, or a kind of adult male with young boy type of it's homoerotica. I don't know that I would call it homosexual love. And the idea that it can have many meanings is something that makes some of these poems very special. Give me a moment. I'm going to try to set up to have Shlomo Yudov sing this for you. Just a part of it. Can you see a slide that says Yamim Levanim, white days?
Yes, we see it.
Hopefully you can hear it also.
ימים לבנים
Can't
Seth,
hear.
Can't hear anything.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's muted. Hang on, Seth. Seth,
Yeah,
if you just click on the lower left, you'll see there's a little, yep, click on that and unmute it. Click again. I don't know why. Unfortunately, it's muted for whatever reason.
can you hear me?
Very
Yes.
well.
Okay, that's good. This happened to me in the North American Jewish Choral Festival as well. I tried to adjust the sound and it did not work. Okay, I'm going to cut this off. Close this. As long as you can hear me, I'm happy.
We're happy too.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to try to figure it out because I have a video I want to play for you, and we'll see how that works. Goldberg lived in Tel Aviv on Rehov Arnon 15 until she got the job in Jerusalem. And in addition to translation and poetry, she also was interested in the plastic arts, and some of her creations have survived. I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. Here is a mosaic in Jaffa, and Goldberg was buried in Jerusalem. Hamilim hayu neurai ushenotai. Words were my youth and my years. Hen ha'eben hazot she'al pi. They are this stone which is on my mouth. At least that's how I think it should be understood. Alterman is on the 200 shekel note. And Anu ohavim otach moledet, we love you, O our fatherland, our homeland, b'simcha, b'shir, uve'amal, in joy, in song, and in labor, is the quote from Shir Boker. Alterman was probably the most famous of the Kassit crowd. I culled a couple of pictures from the internet. You can see Yehoram Gaon on the left. I want to say that he's speaking with Arik Einstein, but I really don't know. On the right, you can see Alterman with his daughter Tirza Amal at Kassit. Tirza Amal was a very sad story. She was a very talented woman, did poetry and many other things, but it seems like she committed suicide in 1977. And I have another picture of Kassit over there. At the North American Jewish Choral Festival, several of us performed one of Alterman's most famous pieces, Magash HaKesef. Professor Don Laor, who wrote a biography of Alterman, wrote that on November 29th, after the UN declaration that there should be a partition of the British Mandate for Palestine, Yitzhak Sadeh, the founder of the Palmach, and Yosef Avidar, a senior Haganah commander, had a conversation. Alterman was there, and they talked about how the creation of the state would exact 10,000 victims. A few weeks later, as it happened on December 15th, a speech by Chaim Weizmann was published. I should say report about a speech. Weizmann was in America. He wrote these words in English, but Alterman probably read them in Haaretz. Ein medina nitenet la'am al magash shel kesef. A state is not presented to a people on a platter of silver. And he wrote this poem. It's a little bit late in terms of the amount of time that I have. I have a recording over here from a Zamir performance last year that was found online. Zamir Chorale, I think Bobby Sood may know the answer to this. It says it's 1 year old, which is why I said it's 2021. There are also 3 or 4 other arrangements, including Nurit Hirsch and Nahum Heyman. And here is the entire poem, translated by Stern, although I made a few corrections to it. Alterman talked about Medina Yehudit, a Jewish state, as opposed to Medinata Yehudim. People familiar with Herzl might find that interesting. And the rest can be found in Toldot Yisrael and the history of Israel. When Alterman wrote this, he published this in December of 1947. No one knew that there would be a state, and the state would be called Medinat Yisrael. Maybe Alterman did, I don't know, but no one else knew it. Pigishala in Ketz is our next song. This also is Nomi Shemer, and I think that our Cantor Roth has learned this one as well. Is that right, Janet?
והשופטת פתאום התלעד עיניי בחלומות, ברחוב לוחם שוטט שקיעות של פטל, תעלמי אותי לעלומות. אל תתחנני סוגים מגשם, לבדי אחיה מארצותייך אלך, תפילתי דבר ממנה מבקשת, תפילתי אחת והיא אומרת אלך. קצה העצב עינות הליל, ברחובות ברזל ריקים וארוכים, אלוהי ציווני פת לעול עלייך מעוני הרב, שכנים וצימוקים. טוב שאת ליבנו על ידך לוחדת, אל תרחמי ומאיפה לרוץ, אל תניחי לו שיפיל כחבל מהכוכבים שנשארו בחוץ. שם נוהג ירח מנשיקת הבחר, שם רק ילך את שיעולו מרים, שם שכנות אוויר ערף, היא כמתהפכת עלי לקולה מהרים. ואני הודיה כי לכל הטוב בהרי מסחר פרשות וחמות, יום אחד אקולופסו הראש לפתוח את חיוכנו זה מבין המרחבות. לספרים רק את אחת והשופטת פתאום מתלעד עיניי בחלומות, את ברחוב לוחם שוטט שקיעות של פטל, תעלמי אותי לעלומות. את ברחוב לוחם שוטט זה שקיעות של כתר ועם יודעים לעלומו.
The last song on the reverse of the 200 shekel note is called Shir Boker, although it's often known as Beharim Kfar Hashemesh Milahetet. This came from a film that was released in 1934, 1935. The music was by Daniel Sambursky, and Alterman was hired, a very young Alterman. Alterman was born in 1910 and come to the Palestine when he was 15 years old in 1925. He was still a relatively young man in the 1930s, and Sambursky had the large billing. The Alterman has very small billing, but the songs that came out of this film were actually justifiably quite famous. Shir Boker is at approximately 14 minutes and repeated again towards the end. Ba Menucha Liyagea is at 24:41. There's another song called Hach Patish, and there's a fourth song called Tel Aviv, which really isn't given a lot to do in the film, but those are the four that he wrote. I have a reference here to the Efi Netzer, but I'm going to try to get the YouTube to work for us. Screen sharing is paused. New share. And I'm going to start with something I wrote, Janet, earlier, that this is an angelic performance over here. The conductor is called Forthouse Ben Tzitzi, and I had always wondered if there are recordings of Ben Tzitzi's extravagances. You'll see that not only is there an angel singing, this is Raphael if I'm correct, but there's also beautiful views of the Jordan Valley from the amphitheater at the Hebrew University. David Ben-Gurion, the British Mandate High Commissioner was there, and a number of other people. And see how many of you can recognize, or how quickly you can recognize what Raphael is singing about. Oh, let me go back to the beginning. Were you able to hear this?
Yeah.
Good.
The Hebrew University, with its glorious open-air theater.
Great sheet.
How many of you know what this is? Barb,
It was Breshit. It was
Yeah.
the
who,
first words of the Torah.
who was the composer?
That I can tell.
Janet, have you ever done the Gabriel role in this? No. So this is Haydn's creation, done in Hebrew. Fordhouse Ben-Sitzi did Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah the prophet, Yehuda HaMaccabi, Maccabeus, Yitziat Mitzrayim, Israel, Egypt, and a few other these great things. The chorus was generally amateurs. The soloists were professionals. And I have not yet found out. I just found that I didn't watch the entire film. I only found this yesterday or today, that he had a recording of the creation as part of his thing. Let's go and find now the Shir Boker. Okay, I haven't memorized what minute it's at. And my notes are not going to find it. So let's hope that I find it quickly.
For efficiency. Itself, they were famous in ancient times. They have become famous again.
Here it is.
Public posters describe what the Jews of Palestine feel, as told by a typical worker at the mass meeting.
Elsewhere in this film, you can also see the Shir HaEmek. By the way, I'm going to add that Yecheskel Brown was commissioned by the Zamir Chorale. Bobby Sue wrote this in the chat, the story about how it came to be commissioned. And yes, Magash HaKesef was recited by many families at the Seder each year, or it's recited at Yom HaZikaron many years. Well, I have some final comments I want to make, and I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint again. Let me share screen. PowerPoint. And these are the words from Shir Boker. I told you where it is that these people lived, and I wanted to point out, especially from our discourse these days, that Rachel the poetess and Bograshov, Chernichovsky and Achad Ha'am, Ben Ami Street is where Alterman lived as a kid when he was 15 years old. Dizengoff 117 is Kassit. Arnon Street is 15 was Rachel and Shoreret. Sderot Nordau was where Alterman lived with his wife. Alterman had two homes. He also had a mistress who lived quite far away, well, in south of downtown Tel Aviv. In any case, Google tells me that this pathway from Chernichovsky's home to Alterman's home is less than an hour walking. In other words, if you were to walk and look at all the plaques and talk about them for a few minutes, it would take less time than we've spent today together. And today we like to think about how you have Ashkenazim. They were born in Warsaw or in the Russian Empire. They were educated in Germany. They all lived within a couple of miles of each other, not even a couple of miles, a couple hundreds of feet of each other in Tel Aviv. We like to think about how this is very much a single narrative. At the North American Jewish Choral Festival, I think I read this in Hebrew, but I might have read it in English. This is by Eitan N. Glass, the N is from Nachmias, and I put this into my essay because I had screened a very interesting and very strange Israeli movie called Haganenet, the kindergarten teacher, where on the beach in Tel Aviv, the kindergarten teacher quotes to a 5-year-old how Bialik is Ashkenazi, and she herself is partially Ashkenazi, but he is Sephardi, and something about what all that means. Here is what Glass wrote. Hamishorer hal'umi shel Ashkenazim Chaim Nachman Bialik sana otanu, et השחורים, et הספרדים, et המזרחים, ובכבוד והדר הורד הרגיש הזה לקבר. מה לעשות? ואני אוהב את שיריו. ליבי נשרף למילותיו ולא סולח. הכניסיני תחת כנפך בן שרמוטה. You have the translation. It is as coarse as you might think, but it shows the tension even of a Sephardic now majority, more, well, with the Russians coming, it's no longer, but large Sephardic population where still the elite poets are from the Ashkenazim. The composers, at least, are a lot more diverse than the poets were. Naomi Shemer was born in the land of Israel, and she lived in North Tel Aviv, north of the Arcon River, and she's buried in Kinneret. She wrote 3 of our songs. Moni Amarillo, I think, was a Sephardi. In any case, he came from Romania, and as Salamoni Amarillo has a Sephardic name. He and Yidov, I think, are the only 2 of our composers who are still among the living. This is Shlomo Yidov. Amarillo went to Chile. Yidov is from Argentina. This is Yehuda Sharet, and I have a picture of him conducting an open sing. Sharet came from a Russian family. His family, though, lived in what today we would call the West Bank, in a very tiny Arab village, hoping both to encourage Zionist settlement there and also to encourage Jewish-Arab relations. At least that's how the story is sometimes told. Sambursky is the same. He's the Ashkenazi from Germany and came to live in Tel Aviv, and here is his plaque. I don't know whether Tovia Shlonsky ever made it to the land of Israel, but I have a picture of Shlonsky's father and mother over here to finish it out. They were from Odessa, again, like many of the others. And of course, the song was a Russian folk song, probably. I wanted to end with a comment about the artist. Osnat Eshel did all of the designs for the shekels that we've been talking about. I went to her website this morning figuring that we should look a little bit at her graphic design. She has the 20, the 50, and the 200. I don't know why the 100 isn't on it, but she has pages and pages of stamps and medallions and artwork and some bar mitzvah invitations and everything else. But she was the one responsible for all 4 of our shekel notes, both front and back. I'm going to ask Carol to make a pitch for the Colorado Hebrew Chorale at this point, and then I'll stay on for conversation, discussion, what have you. Carol, take it away. Oh, Janet, Carol's going to thank you also, but I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This cooperation with Janet is wonderful. Cantor Roth initiated this series about 2 years ago with Songs of Tel Aviv. I asked her if she was able to sing at the North American Jewish Choral Festival. She said no at first, and she said, oh yeah, I can do it. And then when I said, can you do this one? She said, great. Janet, from the bottom of my heart, many thanks. We should all applaud her. Carol, do you have anything you want to add?
Okay, friends, just to let you know, while the Colorado Hebrew Chorale is getting ready to resume our in-person rehearsals next week with a Zoom option, and our treble voice choir Kol Nashim does the same starting on Thursday, September the 8th. We will be having, Colorado Hebrew Chorale Enterprise, will be meeting at the Golda Meir House on the Auraria campus on Sunday morning, September the 18th, for a family-friendly free program, 11 a.m., just in time for Rosh Hashanah with Golda. So we hope you will join us. It's free. Don't think we'll have a Zoom link for that program. So sorry we can't make it available as a live stream. Other activities that are going on, find out about them at coloradohebrewchorale.org or on Facebook. I want to thank everyone from relatives, you know who you are, to friends, to supporters, literally the USA, Canada, Israel. It's been a delight to have all of you with us this evening. And we don't know when we're going to do a L'chaim next, but we'll figure it out based on your support. Speaking of support, as I said at the beginning, we can't do it without you. So there is a donate button at coloradohebrewchorale.org. Any contribution would be welcome. So Janet's got her guitar ready, so it looks like we're going to be sent out in song. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. We appreciate you hanging out, especially if it's very late for you or extremely early in the morning for you. Kol Tuv, everyone. Take it away, Janet.
So I want to thank Seth and Carol for inviting me to do this. It's really a pleasure. And I also got to learn some new songs. And I think I'm just going to sing you, so as not to extend it too long, I'll just sing you part of what I think is perhaps my most favorite song of the evening, which I learned recently, which is Peki Shala Enketz. שוקתי אליי, אל גנך, אליי גנך, אליי גופי, זכר חר בין ידיי. לספרים רק את תחל, והשופטת פתאום מתלעת, אליי בחלומות. תרחוב לכם שוטר, שקיעות של פטר, תעלמי אותי לעלומות.
Thanks again to Janet and to all of you. I'll stay on for a while, and some of the others of you want to stay on for a little while. I haven't seen some of you for a while. So I'm going to thank my relatives, my sister, some of the friends I haven't seen for a while. Alini was on for a while. I don't think she's still on.
I'm going to be turning off the recording.